It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Kent Martin, founder, president, and CEO of Signature Custom Cabinetry. In 1981, Kent's grandfather passed away, leaving him some of his woodworking equipment. Shortly thereafter, he purchased a rental property where Kent was able to set up his woodworking shop, and that has been a lifelong passion ever since. In 1985, Kent joined Conestoga Wood Specialties as a door assembler in their production facility. He stayed there close to 7 years and held various positions with the sales and marketing department. By 1989, he developed a vision to start his own cabinet manufacturing operation, and Signature Custom Cabinetry was born. After a year of operations, Signature outgrew the small workshop for their 10 employees, and today the company employs over 130 associates. Their mission is simple: build a great company by honoring God and serving people. In 2013, Kent bought back all the stock of Signature and is now the sole owner of the company. Kent Martin, welcome into the corner office.
Hey, it's good to be here, Brant. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate it.
Wonderful to have you. We were just talking a few minutes ago about some nice, warm Indian summer days we've had. We're recording this in kind of late fall, but we've been blessed with some nice weather. But I think the winter is soaking in, both here in Connecticut and from what I gather for you in Pennsylvania as well.
We were spoiled for a few days, but I think it's over. Yeah,
Indeed we were.
Winter's on the way.
Yeah. Well, we always like to kind of start the podcast learning a little bit about you and your early years. But, this pandemic is obviously taking some new turns. As we were warned, we're going into the winter season. We've had several days of increasing numbers of cases and hospitalization and death rates. And, how are you holding up personally and professionally during these interesting pandemic times, Kent?
Well, it certainly has been an interesting year and quite challenging. I was actually traveling abroad in February and March and spent some time in Israel and returned home thinking that we were running 20-30% ahead of the prior year. Business was booming. It looked like it was going to be a banner year. And within 2 weeks of returning home from that trip, I was shut down and working from home and just kind of in a whole new reality. So we didn't see that coming. But yeah, we were shut down for 6 weeks, and we were the only state in the union that did not follow the DHS guidelines for what essential businesses were or were not. So all of our competitors were open and producing around the country, but in Pennsylvania, all cabinet manufacturing had to be closed. So that was it was a stressful time, and but hey, we got through it. We started back up 6 weeks later when we got the green light and worked through our pipeline. And since then, it's been a little choppy, but all things considered, we're going to end the year in a pretty good spot considering what we've been through.
Awesome. Up against last year or still a little bit behind?
Oh, we'll be behind. Yeah. We were hoping we'd survive, not drop more than 30%, but we'll be down probably 15% over last year. So yeah, you take 6 weeks, 6 weeks out of the production schedule. It's and then the pipeline was shut down too of incoming work. So yeah, it definitely we take a hit, but again, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, good deal. And what about health-wise? Your family, your team there at Signature Custom Cabinetry. Have you guys had illness? Has there been any issues around the virus?
We've been blessed. We've been blessed. We've had a few minor brushes with COVID here on campus, but
Right.
it was a very insignificant hit, and family-wise, everyone's been doing well. So
Great.
yeah, it's good.
Glad to hear it. Well, that's
Yeah.
terrific news. Well, then let's talk about your early years. I'd love to hear a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Well, life started for me on a farm, a dairy farm. My dad was farming the family dairy farm. I have a few faint memories. I was 3 when we moved off of that.
Okay.
And he started driving truck, did that for the next 20 some years. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She raised us 3 boys. I was the oldest of 3. We were all spaced 3 years apart. So
oh goodness, she had her hands full.
She did. Yeah, she did.
And Dad was out of town a lot, right? I guess in the trucking business. Was he out for 2 or 3 days at a time?
He was home every night.
He was home every night.
Yeah,
he
hauled
short
he worked for a limestone company. He'd get up 2-3 o'clock in the morning and head out for the day and be back home for dinner. So he was home almost every night. So.
And did Mom go to college, or did she pretty much get married to your dad soon after high school and start the family?
Yeah, she was married age 19, but she did. She was an LPN.
Right.
So she went to nursing school, and my dad we grew up in a fairly traditional, conservative Lancaster County, Pennsylvania family. So my dad went through 8th or 9th grade, never did graduate. Then, went to the farm and worked there as a young man. So
was college kind of something that was talked about at home? I know that you went to Franklin Marshall and it sounds like your brothers probably did too, or was it something that you kind of experimented with and wasn't really part of the family ethos, so to speak?
It was not part of the ethos. In fact, my brothers did not. And while I attended Franklin Marshall, I did not graduate with a degree, not even associates. I wasn't even there for 2 years. So most of my college was, or really all of my college was more of a while working night class type thing. So,
right, got it.
Yeah.
Did those later on.
Yeah, if I had to do over again, I would have taken that route. But
is the ethos difference in your home with your kids growing up?
It is. All 4 went to college.
All 4 went to college.
Oh yeah.
Well, generationally, that's always the kind of the direction as things roll out.
Yeah.
We're both believers. Obviously, tell me a little bit about, what role, kind of the church played. Was it something that you discovered later in life, or did you grow up in a family that went to church on a regular basis?
I grew up in that setting. My grandfather was a preacher, pastor, a kind of vocational pastor. He was a farmer, but in Lancaster County, a lot of these conservative churches, your side job, your side hustle is pastor. So that's the way it was for him. I don't know if you remember that song. I think maybe Charlie Pride or someone sang "Little White Church in the Dale." But it reminds me of the church I grew up in. Yeah, it's just a little small white church out in the country. So
got it. And then when did you come to Christ, and what role did he play in your upbringing?
I would have been 12 years old. So again, raised in church, and you get to that age and you kind of come to the realization that it's a decision that you want to make. And so that would have been around 12 years old. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
Sunday school, church, youth group, all that was a big part of my life growing up.
And Mom and Dad, what kind of inspiration did they provide you growing up? Were there certain things that you remembered about work ethic or, maybe the faith that were important, memories or lessons from those early years?
Well, yeah, certainly. We grew up, my parents were both strong workers. I mean, we had a garden in the summertime. Mom was stay-at-home mom. So, we grew up in an environment where parents worked hard and sort of passed that on to us, where there wasn't a lot of downtime as kids. So,
right. After school chores and all that.
Oh yeah. We had fun playing too. It was good balance, but we definitely were not short on learning how to handle responsibility. That's for sure. And it paid off later in life.
Sure. Were you a good student in elementary and in high school?
Oh, I was mediocre at best. When I was
did well with the things you like to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I probably didn't value education probably till I got to my later years in high school, and then sort of began to place a higher value on it. But just to put things in context, when I was heading off to kindergarten, I was begging my parents not to send me. And one night, my dad was sitting there paying bills at his desk, and I was standing next to him. I said, isn't it possible that you could teach me how to write checks when I grow up, Daddy? Do I really have to go to school? And
I love it.
so it was not my favorite thing, even from that young age.
Were there people that inspired you other than mom and dad? Youth group leaders at church, or maybe coaches, or other people that had an early impact on you in your childhood?
Not. Well, I had 4 grandparents. Both of my grandparents on both sides of my family I knew them well. My first grandparent died when I was around 12 years old, so that was certainly a big part of my life. Sports-wise, I was not involved in sports. I actually have a slight case of muscular dystrophy.
Okay.
If you met me, you would probably not know unless you spent time with me or watched me climb stairs or something. But because of that, I didn't play contact sports or anything like that in school. So.
Music, theater, chess, anything else that you pursued? I mean, it sounds like mom and dad probably kept you busy at home after school, right?
Yeah, no, we had I did take guitar lessons, so had some music. Mom wanted us to play piano, but we compromised on the guitar. Piano.
Well, your employees are going to be listening to this, so you're going to have to play a song for them, right? That's what happens with this. Wait a minute, you play guitar? I play guitar too, Kat.
Maybe I can talk you into editing that out later when we're done here.
No way. That's going to stay. What about entrepreneurial things? Were there, mowing the lawns around the neighborhood, the ubiquitous paper route? Were there other things that you did for extra spending money? Or again, did mom and dad keep you busy at home?
No, we did. We did have. We raised rabbits, quite frankly, and sold them as kids. That was kind of always fun. We went on a little bit of a kick for a number of years where we raised cantaloupes and watermelons, and these roadside stands are a big thing here in our area. So in late summer we'd harvest our crop and sit out by the road and sell cantaloupes for $1 a piece or whatever.
That's great. And how long would you do that for? Is that a week or two thing, or would that be throughout the fall season?
No, that would have lasted probably a month, maybe a month and a half, something like that.
Cantaloupe's kind of a summer fruit, isn't it? Right?
It is.
Come out
midsummer.
That's fun.
So we
you had a nice garden, it sounds like.
Well, it was big enough, kept us out of trouble, that's for sure. Yeah.
And food on the table as well.
And food on the table, yeah.
I love it. What about, kind of early high school years and when you were giving college a try? Were there, other jobs, part-time jobs you were doing during that period?
Yeah, so when I was 12 years old, my maternal grandfather passed away, and he left woodworking equipment behind. And there was a shopsmith he had in his shop. Some people might be familiar with. It's a 5-in-1 woodworking tool that the shopsmith company used to set up in malls, shopping malls, and demonstrate, demo the tool. It's a 5-in-1, so it had a table saw, a drill press. You would just convert it to whatever it was you want to use. So I inherited that at age 12, and I started tinkering. And before long, I was building picture frames and gun cabinets and dry sinks. And so that continued up until in my parents' basement up until age about 18 or 19, I guess.
Yeah.
19, 20, in that range somewhere.
Right.
And
you worked actually for a wood specialties company, I think. Conestoga, is that the name as you pronounce it? And was that kind of the first job? Were you doing that when you went to Franklin and Marshall, or was that before?
So my first, I did some dishwashing and stuff at a local restaurant in high school, and in between my junior and senior year, I worked at an Amish cabinet shop.
Oh, cool.
So I learned cabinet making there to some degree. When I graduated high school, I had determined I wanted to go to college, but I needed a gap year. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to study.
Sure.
So I was hired at Conestoga Wood Specialties, and 7 months into my employment there, they came down, the HR, we called them personnel managers back then.
Right.
His name was Gary. Gary came down and asked me, in fact, it was the day Reagan was president. It was the day when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up.
Gosh. Yeah,
and so that was capturing my thinking, and I was, couldn't believe that happened. And next thing I know, Gary's standing next to me, and he says, hey, Ken, he says, would you have an interest in a customer service position if we were to offer you one?
Yeah.
And the rest of the day, I forgot about the Space Shuttle Challenger, and all I could think about was this potential opportunity. So I did end up getting that position, and then I loved what I did, and college got pushed to the side for a while. So.
And you stayed with them for about 6 years, right? You had a couple of positions.
I was there 6 or 7 years. Yes. I would have started in In 85, 86, I would have went into my customer service role. And then in 89, we started Signature. And I left Conestoga in 92. So I had some overlap there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Things were getting up and running.
Yeah.
So how interesting that at 12, Granddad leaves you some woodworking tools. You must really have a passion for that. Do you still do, kind of your own kind of private woodworking as well? Has that been something you've continued to do over the years?
That's an interesting question with an interesting answer, perhaps. I've told people many times jokingly that I'm still kind of ticked off that God gave Michael Dell computers and stuck me with cabinetry. Computers were a lot more lucrative. The point in that statement is more about communicating the fact that what I love more than anything is building an organization and growing it. It just happened that cabinetry and woodworking was what was in my hands at that moment.
Right.
And so it's not, I wouldn't call it a passion. I enjoyed it back in the day, but it's not something that I, spend time at today. I'm much more passionate about envisioning the future and taking Signature to the next level and spending time on that.
Well, God gives us different gifts, doesn't he?
He does.
Right? We use them at different times.
I look back in the day when my dad was driving truck and we used to ride with him, and I'd say, Dad, why don't you buy 10 trucks or 15 trucks? And why do you only have one?
You're still writing those checks, Kent.
Yeah. Well, but looking back, I realize I've been wired for that type of growth and visionary thinking ever since I was a little kid. But back then I just,
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, Signature Cabinets and hear about how that's grown. But just talking about a little bit about the early years, you were a customer service manager, and then you went into sales, I think, as well.
I did.
Did you manage people in those jobs too, or were you more of an individual contributor when you were at Conestoga?
No, I did. I started out as an individual contributor in the customer service, but it wasn't long until I was given leadership to the customer service team and the order processing group. And I was young. I was 22 years old at that.
Early 20s.
Point,
right? And managing people much older than you, I presume.
Much, much, double,
How
triple.
did you do with that? What were some of the challenges you faced during those years?
Back then, in those days when you're that young, you don't know what you don't know, and you accept that responsibility. You sort of feel invincible, and you're motivated by the trust people are placing in you, and you plow forward. And I certainly made my share of mistakes, but and learned a lot in the process. But it was just put one foot in front of the other and keep it going.
Any specific lessons that you pulled away from those 6-7 years that you've applied at Signature?
Well, there was a lot that I learned in that period. In fact, I say I got my MBA in those early years working for a company. Conestoga at that time was, I'm going to guess, in the, I don't remember for sure, but 50 to 65 million range probably in revenue.
Privately owned.
Privately owned, yeah.
Was it a family business?
Yep.
Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the owner, Norman Hahn, who's passed away now a few years ago, but he was someone that we never had a mentor relationship that was formalized, but he was someone that I admired immensely.
Looked up to.
He was a person of faith. Ethics, morality, the way he ran the company was out of his core convictions, and it was just always someone that I could sort of look to as a blueprint and pattern after. And I learned an infinite number of things just in my experience and my time there at that organization.
Would he have been a C12 member if C12 existed back in the day?
Oh, probably would have been. Yes. Yeah.
Did he live it? I mean, was it would you consider that a faith-based organization there?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Was that part of the attraction when you joined them, or was it more because of the woodworking, industry that you were?
Well, what attracted, or the reason I ended up there, it was really about a half a mile down the road from where I grew up. So it was a natural spot to go. I mean, I had other applications out too, but that was a natural company to consider working for a year. So, yeah.
Well, Signature's been around for almost 30 years. Congratulations on that success. And, you obviously were working, I guess they were kind of a competitor, right? I mean, would you consider back in the day that, your idea of getting that up and running was competitive to Conestoga, or were you kind of took a different tack, so to speak?
No, it's actually they're a key supplier. In fact, they're one of our largest suppliers. So what Conestoga Wood Specialties does is they build cabinet doors.
Okay.
So
so that's a component of what
it's a component of what we do. Yeah.
Oh,
So we buy a lot of product from them, a lot of
nice.
doors. And
Nice.
I always joke that I couldn't hit my sales quota, so I had to start my own company, become my own customer just so I could, yeah, that's obviously not at all true. But
what was the insight? I mean, what did you kind of, I mean, you were mid-20s at the time, right? I mean,
yeah.
you were still a pretty young man. What kind of motivated you to say, kind of go out of the comfort of a family-led business? Sounds like with someone who may have not have been a designated mentor, but a good boss, a faith-based company. You were there 6-7 years. It wasn't like you were a fly-by-night guy. Tell us a little bit about your thinking around setting up Signature at the time. Did you see a market opportunity? Was it wanting to be an entrepreneur yourself? Were there other motivations?
One of the things that I observed early on in my role there in the customer service period was so we had probably 4,000 people on our customer list, a lot of small, a lot of larger companies, but a lot of small mom pop type cabinet shops. And what I observed was how many people that our customers that they didn't do a great job at running their organizations. And it was those that sort of inspired me to think, again, as a young invincible man, that if they can make it work, certainly I can do it better. And that sort of became the impetus for me mustering up the courage to say, again, if they can make this work, certainly I can make it work too, and probably do it much better. And that's sort of what planted the seeds.
Yeah. And as you set it up, then you did you do it with the CEO's blessing of Conestoga, or was it kind of a side business before things got underway? How did that transition take place?
So my brother, who I said earlier is 3 years behind me, my second brother, was graduating from high school. And he was working with me on the part-time side hustle, in the wood shop that I was doing evenings and weekends. Sure. And I said, I think we can do this full time. Why don't, instead of you going off and getting a job somewhere else, why don't we start a cabinet company? So that's when Signature was officially born. Wow. And he was the first employee. He worked by himself for 1 year. I was there evenings and weekends, but during the day he was by himself. 1 year later, we started hiring people and hired one of my best friends, and he is actually still with us today. He's our longest term employee managing our plant.
That's great.
So
the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest is history. I joined about 4 years later as a full-time when I resigned at Conestoga. And yes, Norman, the Hahn family knew what I was doing, and it was full disclosure. And when I left, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I'm sad to see you go. We'd love to have you here, but certainly bless you in what you're doing and wish you the well. And I'm glad that you're at least going to be a good customer of ours if we can't have you here." So it was all good relationship. Yeah.
What about brother number 3? Did he come knocking at the door looking for a job at some point?
Yeah, he was here for a number of years.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. He worked for us for probably about 10 years or so. So yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit about how lessons from, Conestoga kind of played into how you set up your management structure at Signature. Were there, things that you saw there that you decided you kind of wanted to run things differently, or how did that kind of play out when you got things going at the Signature? Because it was a couple of years, right, until you came in full time.
Yes, it was. It was about 4 years before I came full time into my role at Signature. So when we started Signature, it was a 1-2 man shop. By the time I joined Signature full time, we had 10 or 12 people. I think I might have been the 12th full time employee in our organization. So we were a lot smaller than the company I'd worked for. Being they had factories in other states, and so it was a much bigger organization. However, I used to create production schedules and strategic planning things, and I think my brother and others in the organization that were working close with me thought I was kind of crazy and, creating this big company feel in this little, 10 or 12 man shop. Right. But it really did help me to understand how to structure an organization and how to set things up and move and grow into it. For instance, when I was in the sales role, I worked closely with hiring and managing independent sales reps. So, that helped me figure out how do you hire and onboard and manage independent sales reps, which we've done over the years, and how to establish credit policies and and just all those types of things that I could go on with a list of all the different things that I was able to learn and benchmark and bring with me.
Great
from my experience there. Yeah, it was incredible.
Awesome. And how many employees today, Ken?
We have about 130 people here today. Yeah,
that's great. And you supply nationally, internationally?
We do have a national footprint. We sell specifically to a network of independent designers and dealers, as we call them,
right?
And that carry our product. We have the largest concentration of our customer base would be between Boston and DC here in the Northeast.
Wow.
But then we go all the way down the East Coast into Florida and all the way out to California, Seattle, and a lot in between. So
fantastic. And that growth's of course come, over the years. I assume you probably started regionally first, right? And serving the local area. Was that kind of how things evolved?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we started selling right here in our backyard, and just over the years would grow and expand. And in some cases it was intentional where we went next. In other cases, opportunity would pop up and we'd seize it. So
sure. Wonderful. Yeah. And are your brothers involved in ownership as well? Is it 100%? Do you have outside partners? Kind of how are you structured along that way?
So right now I'm the sole owner. In 2013, I bought them out. So Devon was just ready for something different.
Yeah.
And had done this all his life. And the recession was a brutal experience. We actually took the company and essentially cut it in half in a matter of about 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tough.
So in 2006 we had hit our peak sales, and in 2009 it was half of what it was. But even though the 2006 was a peak, 2007, 2008 were off slightly, but between 2008 and 2009 it was a brutal ride down.
Brutal time.
So
real tough. And today, second generation coming along, any of your progeny getting involved in the business? Will this be something that will, continue to be a family-run business over time, or too early to tell at this stage?
That remains to be seen.
Right.
Our youngest two are in college. Our oldest two are married. We have 4 grandchildren.
Oh,
so and our oldest son does work here with us in the sales and marketing side. Whether or not it becomes a family business or not in the next generation, we'll see.
Too early to tell.
My goal is not to place any obligation whatsoever on any of our children. I want them to pursue whatever it is that God has in mind for them and follow their dreams and skills. And so,
awesome.
Time will tell.
Yeah, I've got a 30-year-old as well, and he hints at every now and then about wanting to get into search, and he's a mechanical engineer in a very different business. And son, pursue your dream.
Amen.
Keep making, renewable batteries for a while. Yeah. The country needs, and the world needs more of that than potentially more recruiters. But we'll see. I know he's coming out for Thanksgiving, so we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that. So professional management team, I mean, how are you kind of structured in that regard? Has it been people that you've been kind of homegrown up through the organization? Have you gone outside to, competitors and brought in talent? How did you kind of build that out over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we were about 10 years into it, we were growing at that point between 25 and 30% a year.
Wow.
And we were approaching that $10 million mark. And I knew that if this was going to continue, we needed to bring in people that had some been there, done that experience.
Right.
So I actually reached out to my boss who had worked for Conestoga.
Yeah.
He had left a couple years before.
Okay.
And had moved on. And but I knew where he had went. The company was in our industry, but they were not thriving. And I had a hunch that he might be open to a different idea. So I reached out to him, and after a couple of months of recruiting and conversation, he agreed to join our team.
Oh, that's awesome. He came on your team. Wow.
And at that same time, he had referenced somebody who he had known at the company he was at, again, had left and moved on. But he said, this gentleman's he's unemployed right now and taking some time away just to convalesce. But he said, he's probably potentially looking. You might want to reach out to him as well. I'm thinking, I can't hire 2 people at this level to form an executive team. But at the end of the day, it worked out. We did hire both of them in 1999.
Wow, cool.
And in the next 7 years, we tripled the size of the organization.
Wow.
In that run up into 2006, where we peaked.
What a strategic move, right? And would you account it really because of bringing the industry people in and
Yeah.
helping to form your strategies.
Yeah. I mean, things like just HR policies and 401k plans, all the way down to just, infrastructure and within the operation, just in so many levels. Having that experience and the talent and what that represented and allowed us to grow was just tremendous. And
that's awesome.
These gentlemen were 10 to 15 years older than I was. So,
of course,
I was the president of the company, but I was learning a lot. It was maybe a bit of a rare situation in the sense that they were able to mentor me while reporting to me at the same time. But it was a tremendous opportunity. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So now today, we have a VP of marketing, VP of sales, and a VP of operations that all report directly to me. That's my 3 direct reports.
Yep.
And everyone else rolls up under them in some direct or indirect way.
And are they industry people, or are they also people that homegrown came up through the organization?
One is homegrown. It came up through Signature. That's our VP of marketing. Yep. And our VP of operations actually worked with me at Conestoga. So I knew him there. I trained him in customer service. So he came up through the industry, in a sense, homegrown. Our CFO came in from the outside. And
got it. So good combination.
The CFO that joined back in '99 retired after 17 years, and Peter, who's now with us, came on in 2017.
Yeah,
and has been doing a great job. He was in venture capital and had some CEO, C-suite experience as well. So it's been a good team.
Great,
a
great
good
combination.
Mix. Great, yeah.
Well, looking back to Conestoga, and when you first started managing those people that were probably twice your age, right? In some instances,
or more,
more, right?
Yeah.
And your leadership today, obviously, 25, 30 years later, how would you say it's evolved? What are some of the key changes that you've, kind of implemented in your leadership style over that period, Kent?
That's a good question. Maybe kind of tough to answer. There was a point probably 10 years or so ago where I sort of slowly started to, in my mind, transition from learning and feeling like I was the youngest guy in the room to transitioning. I got to be careful how I say this, because we never stop learning, and we never, of course, think that we know it all and have it all figured out. But transitioning to a bit of a different mindset where it's more now about me sharing the experiences that I've had over the years, and sowing seeds into the younger generation, and being open and intentional and willing to not just think about myself as a sponge learning, but while continuing to learn, also giving back and being willing to think more intentionally about how to share what I've learned over the years and pass it on.
I like the sponge analogy, because we do spend a lot of our early years being that dry sponge, right, and sucking stuff up, and then it kind of comes a time where it's time to squeeze a little bit out and share that around. Yeah, that's awesome. And culture wise, obviously you've built this company from scratch. You've got well into the hundreds of employees. You've got worldwide, nationwide, and possibly some stuff that goes overseas as well. How would you kind of describe your company culture, and what's kind of unusual or unique about Signature?
One of the things that I've been blessed with throughout the entire 30 years that we've been doing this is to have the opportunity to have people come on board that share the same values, share the same perspectives. Again, it's not that we all agree on everything exactly the same, but generally speaking, we share the same value system, and out of that has developed a culture that has attempted to put people first. We have our mission, or our vision, is to build a great company that honors God and serves people. Greatness to us, when you say that, you have to define, well, what does that mean exactly? To us, greatness is living within our core values and behaving within our value system, and being able to live to our full God-given potential within the organization to serve other people. That's kind of how we consider it. If we're all doing that well here within the organization, then that we're able to, we think that's what defines greatness.
That's great. And is that kind of a stated mission or value statement that you share with new employees? And people that are interviewing for the company or something on the website?
It is. Yeah. It's
awesome.
It's not on the front page of the website, but it's not hidden either. It's there.
Becomes a good sorting device, doesn't it? If you put that out there, and folks that perhaps it moves people away from you, and that's okay. And I'm sure it attracts others as well that are like-minded.
Yeah, I'm certainly the honor God piece. That's a personal, whether you believe or don't, or how you feel about that. That's a personal thing. But I think everybody can, or at least every decent human being can, at least get around the idea that serving others, and and there's so many different ways to define what serving means. But just doing good by others, whether it's treating people in the workplace with honor and respect, or whether it's actually going out and helping those in need. There's just a broad way of approaching and defining that. But everybody can, or at least hopefully, get their head around that and say, I want to be part of that, or I can contribute to that in some level.
Sure.
So awesome. And if not, that's a good screening.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, those are important. I always try to advise my, recruiting clients. The more you can tell somebody about who you are, and the cultural piece becomes so important. It works both ways. It's a good filter. It'll certainly steer people away that aren't particularly aligned maybe with the culture that you have, but hopefully also attract folks that certainly believe in the same things that you do.
We were talking at an offsite just recently, just a couple of days ago, and we were talking about our culture and what makes Signature unique. Kind of doing that SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And one of our managers. So we have 4 in the executive team, myself and my 3 direct reports, but then there's another 7 people that make up the broader management team. So we were all together, all 11 of us. And we were talking about strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And we were talking about our culture and what makes us unique. And this one gentleman said, one of the things that makes Signature unique is adults act like adults. And they went on to say there's no politics, there's no drama. And when I hear other people that I'm acquainted with in my peer, in my peer groups or whatever, that talk about their experiences at work, I said it's amazing, some of the drama and just craziness that you get caught up in. And he just says, there's no politics here. It's just a very safe place to work. So as I sat there and listened to that, it affirms that we have a culture here that we want to protect. It certainly isn't perfect, but there's a lot of good things that have come out of this over the years. And it's just a testament to the team that's here and how well we work together. So
well said.
I feel very blessed. Yeah.
You guys have grown tremendously. You've probably been involved in a lot of the hiring, maybe not so much today. I know you certainly would. If anyone, God forbid, leaves your executive team, you'd be involved in that. But you probably get involved maybe a level or two below your organization. You don't give them maybe a whole lot of time. You count on your people to do the screening, whether it's your HR or the direct managers. But when you get involved in those types of discussions, and you maybe have 15 or 20 minutes with a new promising manager or a senior manager might be coming in, what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
That's a great question. I would tend to focus on, and I do focus on, probing or looking for emotional intelligence, values, and culture fit.
Yeah.
The other stuff can all be taught and can be learned over time.
Right.
But it's looking for people that have a heart to serve others, that put people first, that can demonstrate at least some level of empathy to others around them. And that emotional intelligence piece, emotional health, is just so critically important to having a solid team. How do you get at
that? Are there specific questions you ask, Kent, or do you kind of do open-ended to kind of see what they say in situations? Because that's key, so key to get at, and but it's hard to sometimes ask, right?
It is. There are questions you can use to probe for that, and things that I've honed over time. But I'll tell you, I'm going to put a plug in here for a company called Bartell out in State College. But they do an assessment. It takes it takes a couple hours to complete it. So they set you up online. So if we have a couple candidates that were,
you use them? Yeah,
we use them to do this assessment. It's about,
that's great.
I think it's about $900 per person.
Yeah. Is it kind of like a DISC? Is it a behavioral or motivational type of test?
They do incorporate some of the DISC test into the assessment itself, but it is a wide-ranging probe and when that's done, it's all done online. And when the candidate is done with it, then they take it and put it into a report out format and spend an hour per person with, I'll say me if I'm the hiring manager, and are able to walk me through that report, or maybe it's two or three reports if there's several candidates we're considering through that profile. And it's amazing. I actually, after we put our CFO through it, several of our CFO candidates, when we hired Peter, I called back to them and I said, okay, the hiring's all done. That's all behind us now. I want to take that test myself so I know what we're putting these people through. And then I want you to give me that 1 hour report out.
Wow. Good for you.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
Because I know myself.
Right.
It was amazing what that report out revealed about me.
Yeah.
Just through that thing. So it's become a go-to tool. A lot of I serve on several nonprofit boards and actually some for-profit boards, and a lot of people have started using it, and it's $900 a person. If you have multiple candidates, you might sound like it's a bit expensive, but I'll tell you what, getting those
it's a big
top
part
key
of the
hires
decision.
right.
Absolutely. I use it in my recruiting. I tell my clients up to 25-30% of the decision should be made on assessments.
100%.
Because it's so hard to get information out of interviews. And I'm glad you've taken it too, because I always have my CEO clients, some of them in their 60s and 70s. Oh, come on, Brant, we can't do this. I said, listen, if you want me to really do my job, I got to know you as well as I got to know, the people we're trying to hire for you, because it is about fit. And, the company CEO or the founder, the owner, is pretty much the culture of the company.
That's right.
In so many ways it drives it. Well, Kent, this has been delightful, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you and Signature and the work you've done there. And we're almost out of time, but I always have a couple of last questions. And, it's hard to ignore the pandemic. We're in mid-February. I wish we were mid-February. We're mid-November now, and we're going into what appears to be a pretty difficult time. And, it's all the spiking is happening, et cetera. What changes do you see ahead? Do you see changes in your business? I mean, people are going to always need cabinets. It's probably one of those things that, we'll have. So, certainly you'll continue to experience growth and generate the great products. But do you see changes in your workforce? Or are there going to be impacts that you see longer term with this? Or, do you kind of think, well, gosh, Pfizer's got a 90% effective vaccine. Let's just get that out to everybody as soon as possible and go back the way we were living, 6-9 months ago.
This is a great question. And as I pondered this, what's this pandemic going to mean going forward? I've kind of looked to 9/11 as a place for clues.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it did change certain things in flying and travel, and certainly safety protocols, security protocols, I should say. There's definitely been some long-term. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think we've sort of gotten back in many ways to normal as a society. And and I expect that there will be some systemic long-term change with this pandemic. It will affect us to some degree, but I think once the danger has passed, and whether that's a vaccine or whatever it is, that's now part of our history, and it's we move beyond it 3-4 years. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more return to normal than maybe what it feels like there might be at this moment.
But masks may not go away, right? Masks may come out every flu season.
They may. Yeah.
It's interesting. I was reading about Japan, because they got hit pretty hard with it, but they already had a culture of wearing masks during the flu season. And they had a very, very low incidence rate. And,
I don't
know about you. I've gotten used to them. They were a little obtrusive at first, but, I'm
still working on it. Yeah. I'm still working on it. But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Well, thank you, Kent. That's great. Well, one last question, and we ask this of all our CEO guests. What kind of career and life advice would you give to someone who maybe has their eyes in the corner office, or perhaps wants to be an entrepreneur like yourself? Maybe working for another company in the industry they'd like to set up a company in someday. And what would you tell that person maybe 15, 20 years behind you in their career?
Another great question, Brant. You're good at this.
I do it for a living, Ken, so it's not fair, really.
No, it's good. It's good. I just had a recording done through Zoom for where I addressed some students at Cairn University earlier this week, I believe it was. And I'll give the same answer here I gave them, because a similar type question came up. Everyone going into business hears about you got to have a business plan. You need to have a vision and a mission. You need to make sure you're not undercapitalized, because one of the number one reasons startups fail is for lack of capital.
That's right. Yeah.
And that stuff is all true. It's 100% true. And I don't diminish any of that. But what I would tell a young person or anybody starting out and wanting to grow a company and into a leadership role, you have to learn to lead yourself before you can lead others effectively.
Right.
You have to be able to know who you are. What are your blind spots? What are your weaknesses? Where do you need to be aware of how you interact with people when conflict arises? What are those things, those vices you have that maybe you don't even aware of it? Your spouse will tell you what they are if you're married. Your kids, your family, an assessment can pull that out. And it can be hard work, and it's often sometimes being vulnerable is being willing to hear and accept things that are uncomfortable.
That's right.
But if the leaders who can develop an emotional intelligence and emotional health and understand who they are, you're so much better positioned then to provide leadership to other people, and you're gonna stand out amongst your peers. And those around you. So that would be my 2 cents. It took me 30 years or so to learn that.
That's all right. That's a good lesson.
It takes time, but I feel like now that I'm in my mid 50s, this time I can actually get started, and I wish I could back up and do some of this over again and see where I could get to.
That's the beauty of age.
That's the beauty of age. Yeah.
Well, Ken Martin, President and CEO of Signature Custom Cabinetry, thank you so very much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you, Brant, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Handley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.